Welcome to Mythbusters. My name is John Vredenberg. I'm a dietitian in the UF Health Employee Wellness Program. In this particular webinar, over the next 20 to 25 minutes or so, we're going to take a look at a lot of nutrition claims and help you sort fact from fiction. What we're going to try to do here is actually go through a series of nutrition claims, and you can really just ask yourself, is this a myth or a fact? Therefore, you can kind of test yourself as we move along. Now, to get credit for this particular activity, all we really need is your name and badge number. You don't have to share your answers with us. You just keep that to yourself. You can send it to that email address you see on your screen, and then just put Mythbusters credit in the subject line. But before we get started, I think it's important to understand everything that we're going to look at is based on what the current evidence suggests about healthy eating. And really, when we look at healthy eating, there's not really a always or a never. Nutrition is not always black and white. So sometimes it gets a little bit more complicated. And when we look at some of these common nutrition myths, there might actually be a small bit of truth in each of them. And I'll explain that as we move forward. Now, really what I want you to also understand with this is this isn't designed to really substitute for any kind of medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. And if you want information about individualized nutrition counseling, I'm going to provide that at the end too, because that's something that our office makes available to all employees. Before we look at each of the different nutrition claims that we're going to review today, I think it's a good time to talk a little bit about the media. Now, obviously, the media is in business to grab your attention, and the best way to grab your attention is to use a bold headline. One of the common ways this is done through the media these days is using something called relative risk. So on your screen, you'll see an example of that term relative risk with regards to a cancer drug. So this hypothetical situation, new drug reduced cancer incidence by 50%. That's a very bold headline. But in fact, what's more important and more helpful in actually communicating any impact of an intervention, whether it's via pharmaceutical or any kind of nutrition agent, is actually look at absolute risk. And that's the more informative piece when we look at these types of advances in medicine. So if we look at it from an absolute risk standpoint, a new drug could reduce cancer incidence from 2 per 1,000 down to 1 per 1,000, which is technically 50%. But if you take a look at the big picture, it's not as significant as you once were thought to believe. So keep that in mind whenever you see some of those headlines. I always try to dig a little bit deeper when they say new study coming out of the university of this or university of that. If you go to pubmed.gov, you can typically find the abstract for many of those research studies and take a look at the actual absolute risk reduction that may have been measured for any of those particular studies that are out there. So I thought with a talking about myth busting, it's important to understand what we're actually looking at when we see popular media stories about some advances in nutrition as well as medicine in general. So to get started here, we'll look at our very first nutrition claim, and I thought nothing more timely than this. Eating certain foods can boost your immunity. Now, this is a myth. I wish it weren't the case, but there's really nothing magical that we can eat that's going to prevent the spread of disease-causing organisms. Not taking more vitamin C, not taking more zinc, not eating more oranges, not drinking a kale smoothie. None of these things are actually going to boost your immunity. Now, eating a well-balanced diet that features plenty of fruits and vegetables and lean sources of protein is a good way to support optimal immune function, but it's not really going to give you a boost. Your immune system either works or it does not work. Things such as personal hygiene, hand washing, physical distancing, those are still your best defense against the spread of illnesses. And if we all look at other ways that we can kind of further support our robust immune system, getting physical activity actually is right up there near the top of the list. Actually, it's thought that increased activity, physical activity, can actually help support the function of our immune cells. Now, when we look closer at nutrition, vitamins A, vitamin C, vitamin D, the mineral zinc, they all play a very important role in how our immune system operates, but those are nutrients that we already get plentiful amounts in our food, so there's no need to take a mega dose of any of those. There has been a lot of research done on vitamin C, but most of the research really is saying that the best it can offer is maybe shortening the duration of a cold. But again, it's not going to offer some type of bulletproof vest against any kind of disease-causing organism. Look at our next claim. A ketogenic diet is a sustainable weight loss approach. I think we all probably heard of the keto diet, but as a quick review, ketogenic diets are designed to put the body into a state of ketosis. And what happens during ketosis is that there's low glucose availability, so the body has to convert fats that are available into ketones so our brain can continue to function. These types of diets can cause significant amounts of weight. However, when we look at it from a long-term standpoint, meaning more than 6 months, these are very rigid diets, typically anywhere from 60 to 80% of the calories coming from fat, the remainder coming from protein-rich foods, and a very small amount in carbohydrates. So it's a very rigid approach to eating, and although people can lose weight on it, what happens oftentimes is that they have a tough time sticking with it. So we'll call this a myth, because as far as its sustainability, it overall and in big population size, it's been very limited. People just aren't able to stick with it. The best diet for weight loss is going to be one that you can stick with. It's going to make you aware of calories and be something that you can actually stick with long term. And again, we'll look at a little bit more about macronutrient ratios as we continue forward. Next claim, drinking apple cider vinegar can aid in weight loss. So yes, apple cider vinegar is touted to do everything from prevent cancer, help with diabetes, save the rainforest. Most of it is bunk. I mean, this is definitely a myth, but again, a good example of how a small kernel of truth can really perpetuate some type of myths. And there has been research showing that for people that actually consumed a tablespoon of vinegar twice a day, were able to lose about 3 to 4 more pounds than those individuals that did not do it. But in this research, both population groups are actually already consuming a lower calorie diet already. So it's tough to say whether or not the vinegar really did that much more different overall for weight loss. There are actually a lot of research when we look at what happens when we drink vinegar. It can make you nauseous. So if you want to lose weight that way by inducing nausea, you could save yourself the taste of vinegar. Just have somebody punch you in the stomach before a meal. Don't do that, just kidding. But again, not anything that's really going to promote anything magical with regards to weight loss. It's not going to hurt. However, vinegar is very acidic. So if you're drinking it, you have to be very careful that it doesn't erode away the enamel of your teeth. So if you want to include it as part of a healthy diet, I'd say get it in your salad dressing and call it a day. Next, a vegetarian diet can provide adequate amounts of protein. So is this a myth or a fact? It's actually a fact. So when we look at a vegetarian approach to eating can be very helpful. There is, though, some misconceptions that because a vegetarian diet does not provide animal products, that it cannot provide adequate amounts of protein. That's false. You can get more than enough protein from plant-based foods. Beans, nuts, and seeds are probably going to be your best concentration of protein-rich foods in a vegetarian diet. High fructose corn syrup is more fattening than sugar. So you'll see claims in supermarkets where they're touting different beverages that are instead made with real sugar, trying to get away from high fructose corn syrup. But it is a myth that it's actually more fattening than regular sugar. And if you take a closer look, if you were trying to compare high fructose corn syrup to just traditional table sugar, there's not much difference. This chart on your screen will show you that comparing table sugar, which is called sucrose, to high fructose corn syrup, which you see in the bottom here, as well as in the middle, when we look at it from a comparison of glucose and fructose molecules, they're almost identical. Table sugar is about 50-50, and depending on the type of high fructose corn syrup will indicate how much additional fructose is present. But you can see they're fairly similar in terms of the amount of each molecule. The truth of the matter is, when we look at what we're trying to promote here, is we should be limiting our intake of each of these types of additives, whether it's high fructose corn syrup, whether it's sugar. So no matter what they are, we typically are getting them in much greater amounts in our diet, and either of those should be limited if we're trying to eat more healthfully. Microwaving destroys nutrients in food. So this is a myth. And when we look at cooking as it relates to nutrient losses, yes, there are some natural nutrient losses in cooking, but microwaving is actually probably going to be one of the better ways to preserve nutrients because it uses no water and is a very short time frame for cooking. And when we look at nutrient losses in food, it's typically in the water and the longer it's cooked. So microwaving actually is going to be probably one of the best ways to preserve the nutrients in food. But again, there's nothing about microwaving that's going to destroy the nutrients, nor is it going to promote any type of irradiation into your body. So those are both myths. You should remove the skin from chicken before cooking it. So again, I'm not sure if this is a long-standing myth, but this is something that's been in nutrition circles, and whether you want to do it or you don't want to do it, it's really up to you. But I'm going to tell you right now, there is really no more extra calories that you're getting from the skin. If you had a 12-ounce bone-in chicken with the skin on compared to the skin off, you're maybe saving 50 calories. Okay, so it's not a huge difference. I don't think there's probably anything more boring than boneless, skinless chicken breast. So if you like the skin, continue to enjoy eating it. Don't feel bad about it. It does provide a little bit more calories and a little bit more saturated fat, but it's not the evil being that it was once made out to be. Dark chocolate is a healthy food choice. Now, again, this is a matter of interpretation of the data. If you listen to all the marketing of dark chocolate, you'll find out that it's one of those quote unquote superfoods, which is not a term I like to throw around there because it's a little bit deceiving. And I'm going to call this a myth. So dark chocolate is rich in polyphenols, antioxidants that are believed to play a role in helping kind of maintain the health of our arteries. But the calorie concentration of dark chocolate relative to the amount of polyphenols it provides can be very high. And typically the bitter the chocolate, the higher the polyphenol count. But if you've ever had really, really dark chocolate, you might notice that the taste isn't quite the same as just traditional milk chocolate. So again, if you want to include it as part of a healthy snack here and there, there's no reason to exclude it, but definitely not touting it as a superfood that's going to promote everlasting heart health. So it's somewhat of a misconception. Actually, I've had people tell me that when they had really dark chocolate, it kind of tastes like melted brown crayon. So there you go. So again, choose what you like as far as chocolate goes. Next up, exercise accounts for a small portion of our daily energy expenditure. So exercise, very important for our heart health. As I said, very important for helping support optimal immune function, but it only accounts for a small portion of our total daily energy expenditure. Most of the calories you burn each day are just to keep you alive, keep your body temperature at 98.6, keep your heart, lungs, liver, brain, all of those active. About 70% of your calories, your daily energy expenditure, is for that basal metabolic rate. Only about 20 to 25% is coming from daily physical activity. Now, again, that varies from person to person. Obviously, a couch potato isn't really burning anything from exercise versus somebody who is running 5 to 7 miles each day. It's going to be burning a lot more calories overall. But when we look at it big picture, exercise typically accounts for a small portion of the calories we burn each day. However, it's still absolutely vital to help promote cardiovascular health, not to mention stress management, and as I said before, supporting optimal immune function. So get out there, get active. Next up, there's an optimal ratio of macronutrients we should all strive to eat. So when we say macronutrients, which you see up there, protein, carbs, fat, the truth is there's no magic ratio. It can be different for everybody and still be correct for those people.
Again, you don't have to have a certain amount from carbs, protein, fat. It really should matter more what your overall health goals. Now, if we look at some of the healthy eating guidelines, when we look at the amount of whole grains, fruits, vegetables, lean meats, healthy fats that we should include, those ratios end up being somewhere around 50% carbohydrate, 25 to 30% fat, and the remainder from protein, but doesn't mean that we all have to have that exact ratio. Talk with your dietitian to see what's going to be best for you based on what your overall health and wellness goals might be.
Food cravings are a sign of nutritional deficiency. This is a myth. There's nothing out there that says that just because you're deficient in a certain nutrient, you're going to crave a certain type of food. Now, there have been instances with iron deficiency where that can lead to a condition called pica, but pica is actually not craving specific foods. It's actually a craving that deals with non-food items. So if you're craving ice or other non-food items, that potentially could be a sign of iron deficiency. Talk to your doctor or healthcare provider about getting your iron level checked, your serum ferritin level checked. That can give you a good estimation of your overall iron stores. But just because you're craving a specific food doesn't mean you're nutritionally deficient in it. Red wine is beneficial for heart health. So this is an area that's, again, we have a small kernel of truth that's blown up to be maybe overestimated in terms of its true cardiovascular impact. I'm going to call this a myth, but I want to explain a little bit more about it. So when we look at moderate red wine consumption as well as moderate alcohol consumption overall, we see lower rates of cardiovascular disease compared to people who aren't drinking at all. You see overall lower rates of mortality. But again, there has not been a cause and effect relationship established to it. So the message here is you don't have to drink if you haven't started. Definitely don't start. But if you are enjoying alcohol, whether it's red wine or any other type of alcohol, moderation is absolutely essential for promoting heart health. And moderation is defined as 1 drink per day for men, 2 drinks per day for women. Once you go above that threshold, the rates for overall mortality increase substantially. So be careful. When we talk about beneficial for heart health, I think it's a little bit overrated. Going for the walk around the block is probably going to be much more beneficial for your heart than having a glass of red wine. However, if you want to enjoy it, go for it. Just pay very close attention to that moderation aspect. Sugar is often added to bread to extend shelf life. So in a quest for healthy eating, we might scrutinize all the different additives in our foods, and this is actually a fact. However, sugar is a very functional nutrient because what it's doing is helping the bread retain some of its moisture so it doesn't go as stale as quickly. And the amount of sugar that's added is typically very, very small. So don't worry too much about the sugar in the bread that you're choosing. Instead, look closely at the label to see the amount of fiber it's providing. It's typically recommended that if we get more whole grains in our diet, getting them from bread that has a whole grain listed as the very first ingredient is the best way in which to do it. So if you flip over a label for bread, just like we see on the screen there, that first ingredient should be whole. So this particular example, you got whole wheat flour. Again, that's much more important to scrutinize than just the small amounts of added sugar that might be in there. Uncured meats are free from nitrates. So nitrates are a very misunderstood nutrient. So nitrates have been linked as potentially cancer causing, but typically the problematic nitrates are those that are found in the processed meats because they're bound to protein. Most of the nitrates in your diet are probably coming from the vegetables you eat, which by no means is going to be harmful to your health. But we are seeing more products being promoted as uncured, and the thought is, oh, well, it's uncured because that way it's going to be free from nitrates. But this is actually a myth. Uncured meats are actually preserved with, typically, most of the time it's going to be celery juice, which is very, very high in nitrates. So my message here is that rather than scrutinize whether or not you're purchasing cured versus uncured pepperoni,
take a close look at how often you're eating those types of foods, because these higher fat processed cuts of meat really should be consumed in very small amounts in our diet. So you're not really doing yourself any nutritional favors by selecting an uncured version of an overall high fat meat. Eating carrots can improve your eyesight. Myth or fact? This is actually a myth. So yes, it is true that carrots are a great source of vitamin A. Deficiencies in vitamin A can lead to night blindness, but they're not going to improve your eyesight. This probably got started as a propaganda scheme back in World War II, when the British discovered this new radar device that actually helped them shoot down German warcraft at night. So to kind of throw the Germans off the scheme a little bit, I think they were telling them that their pilots were eating more carrots, and that's why they were more successful. Who knows what the real truth is, but that's likely where that myth got its overall roots when we look at the promotion of carrots as being a elixir for overall eye deficiencies, but they're not going to improve your eyesight. Eat them because they're healthy. Don't eat them because you need to see an optometrist. Eggs are bad for heart health. So eggs have had a long history in terms of overall their role in heart disease, but this is a myth. And I think it's one that continues to be perpetuated out there because I think mostly because of semantics. So it comes from cholesterol. So cholesterol that we find in eggs is much different than the cholesterol we make in our body. And the cholesterol that we eat actually has a very minimal impact on our overall cholesterol profile in our body. What impacts it more than anything is going to be the saturated fat that we eat, as well as the trans fat that was typically available in our food supply, but thankfully is now a banned additive. So overall, they don't seem to really move the needle when we look at rates for heart disease. So that's a good thing. What I typically tell people is don't over scrutinize the eggs when we look at your breakfast meal. Instead, look at everything else that's being served with it. That's going to indicate whether or not it's actually going to be really good or bad for your heart. So eggs surrounded by bacon, sausage, and biscuits, that's a much different story for your heart than eggs surrounded by fruit and some type of whole grain. So again, eggs are not bad for your heart. Enjoy them like you would any other type of food in the context of a healthy overall plate, but look closer instead at what you're actually having along with those eggs to indicate whether or not it's going to be truly bad for your heart. We should drink 8 cups of water each day. So this is probably one of the longest running myths that I've seen out there. We all need a different amount of water each day. It's not going to be the magic number of 8 cups. This is not bad advice. It's not going to be anything certainly harmful from drinking 8 cups of water each day. But if you're outside and you're more active, you're going to need more water than if you were inside and inactive. So I think one of the formulas that's typically tossed around that's fairly accurate if you want to really kind of individualize your own fluid requirement is your current weight in pounds divided by 2 would be your number of ounces of fluid that you might need each day. And again, there's some disagreement with that, but that would mean that a 200-pound person would need 100 ounces of fluid each day. You get water from not just the faucet, but you also get it in all the foods that you eat, from the breads, the fruits, the vegetables, the meats, all provide various amounts of water into your diet. So it's not bad advice, but it's not going to be the ultimate predictor of overall fluid needs across a very diverse population. I think one of the best ways to really tell is if you're getting adequate water in your diet each day, so that you're going to the bathroom regularly throughout the day. So if you're feeling that sense of urge to urinate every couple of hours throughout the day, that usually indicates that you're getting good amounts of hydration, as well as that you're urinating a fairly light color overall. All right, last one. Cheese can be part of a healthy diet. So I think what I really want to communicate here is that's not just cheese, but really any food can be part of an overall healthy diet. So whether it's cheese, whether it's a chicken wing, whether it's a slice of pizza, whether it's a a garden salad. All of these can be part of a healthy diet. What we look at in terms of evaluating the overall food selections is what it looks like at the end of the day or the end of the week. If most of your food choices are cheese, then chances are we're not talking about it as part of a healthy diet. But if it's just a small segment of what you're selecting, then yes, it can be part of a healthy diet. You look at some of the teaching tools that are used out there for promoting healthy eating. We're all looking at My Plate as one way to promote healthier eating. So the one on the right is a little bit more vague than the one on the left from Harvard. And that's the one I typically like to teach about when we talk about just a starting point for healthy eating. So yeah, if you can limit your milk and dairy to 1 to 2 servings a day, that can be part of a healthy diet. Again, pretty much anything can be part of a healthy diet. So take a look at the big picture. If we're looking at ways to really set up a plate that's going to work best for you and your family and trying to get you in tune with what your overall goals might be, talk to a dietitian. This is something that I can provide for you. If you have questions, you can email me at that address right there. We provide, as I said, free nutrition counseling to employees and their dependents, or if you have any other nutrition questions, I'm here as a resource for you. Again, to get credit for this particular activity, just don't forget to send us your name and badge number, as well as Mythbusters credit in that subject line, and we'll get you those 10 points. And that's all I got for you today. Thanks for tuning in.